So yesterday was a pretty exciting day for anyone who's been waiting for a new graphics card from NVIDIA. They launched their new RTX series of graphics cards at Gamescom with a full live stream, and I did a supercut video of the live stream to kind of cover the key points. So if you're interested in just the key facts in a short video, then go check that one out. I'll leave a card up above for you. But otherwise, this video is a little bit of a sort of analysis of the launch, a few kind of points and comparisons, and I guess a bit of theorizing of how well the cards will do. So first things first, what is RTX? Well, RTX is essentially their way of doing both ray tracing and rasterization in the same pipeline, the same process, which essentially means that you get much more realistic visuals, especially in things like shadows, and it means that it's not as computationally intensive as just straight up ray tracing, but as I said, gives you a little bit better lighting and kind of overall, in theory, experience than just rasterization. Now, because the RTX sort of system, if you like, uses that sort of mixture of ray tracing and rasterization, the older cards which don't physically have any ray tracing or any of the extra bits that they've added to the Turing core on their actual GPUs themselves, they have to brute force this style of computation, which is very intensive, which means that, when NVIDIA said the 2070 is going to be twice as fast as the Titan XP, well, that's kind of there's a bit of an asterisk to that, which basically means it's only going to be twice as fast as the Titan XP in that specific workload. Normal games are very, very different. Now, another key thing to mention is that even if you're excited by this RTX platform and the things that it can do for, the shadows and lighting in environments, the main thing to remember is that this is a software-based thing that needs to be implemented in game engines. They have worked with Microsoft for DirectX ray tracing, or DXR, which means that in theory it might be a bit more widespread than things like PhysX or NVIDIA GameWorks. But it's important to remember that most games right now that are even coming out today, a year or so after DirectX 12 was launched, still don't implement DirectX 12. So the idea that they're going to implement DXR, which is a feature that only one series of graphics cards from one manufacturer supports, is a bit of a long shot. Now let's talk about the actual cards themselves. They launched 3 cards yesterday. This is actually a very big deal because normally on these sorts of launches they launch the 80 and 70 class cards and then wait a couple months and then launch 60, 50 class cards and then wait another like 6-8 months and then they launch the TI, 80 Ti version. This time though, they've actually launched the 2080 Ti straight up out of the box. It is the highest end card they offer now and is also the fastest card they offer now. Kind of impressive, but we'll talk about that in a second. And then they've also launched the 2080 and 2070. Don't get me started on why they called it 20 instead of 11, because that's just stupid, but either way, that's what they've done. The 2080 Ti is actually, as I said, a very impressive card, at least in terms of its raw specs. It has 4,352 CUDA cores with 1635 MHz boost clock on the Founders Edition, the sort of overclock model, although bear in mind that, the Strix versions and Aorus versions and MSI gaming versions, all of those will likely be even higher boost clocks, so bear that in mind and check out the specs and kind of listings for those cards when you see them. The 2080 Ti also has 11 GB of GDDR6 memory, which is a slightly faster, newer version of kind of GDDR, as well as a 260 watt power draw. This is going to be interesting to see, and we're likely going to see the kind of Strix and Aorus and MSI gaming versions be even higher thanks to the higher core speeds, so we'll have to check that one out. And this card, the 2080 Ti, is selling for $999. Not really. The Founders Edition is selling for $1,199 on NVIDIA's website, although checking out the pricing for things like the Strix model, where I actually got a press release with the full pricing, you're looking at like £1,200, £1,300 for some of those models, so this is a good bit more expensive than they're claiming. Now, to give you a comparison for those specs, the Titan XP, which is the highest end kind of still GTX card that that they offer from the last gen. That one has 3,840 CUDA cores, which is about 12% less than the 2080 Ti. So in theory, at least in terms of raw performance, considering that the boost clock of the 2080 Ti is even higher than the boost clock of the Titan XP, that should mean that the 2080 Ti is more than 12% faster. In fact, it's likely in the order of probably 15% faster than the Titan XP, which makes it a pretty both great value for money and just an incredible card. Now, where this really gets interesting is the 2080 non-Ti. That one has 2,944 CUDA cores with a boost clock of 1800 MHz, 8GB of GDDR6 and 225 watts of power draw, and selling for $699 in terms of dollars anyway, although again you're looking at like $800, £800 for a kind of aftermarket version, which is what most people will be buying. To give you a comparison in terms of specs, the 1080 Ti, which is obviously in theory what you would expect to be a competitor to, has a considerable number more cores. It has 3,584 cores, and while the core speed is lower and it's about 100 MHz lower, at least on the Strix version to even the standard version of the 2080, it's likely going to be a decent bit slower than a 1080 Ti, which is kind of a surprising thing to see. And finally, the 2070 has 2,304 CUDA cores with a 1710 MHz boost clock on the Founders Edition anyway. Still 8GB of GDDR6, which is actually nice to see on this sort of 70 class of card, and 185 watts of power draw, and selling for $499, although again on the website it's currently selling for $599 for the Founders Edition, and we're likely going to see even higher pricing for the kind of aftermarket versions. Now, where this gets crazy is in the comparison to the last gen cards. The 1080, which is where you would expect again to compare to with the newer generation card, that one has 2,560 CUDA cores, which is a little over 200 more, and also in terms of its base and boost clocks, we're looking at a little bit higher on even the just Founders Edition versions, and the Strix version being a good bit higher. In terms of the 1070 Ti, that also has more CUDA cores. It's not a massive difference, it's about 130-ish, I think it's 128 specifically, but the 1070 Ti has a notable percentage more CUDA cores than the 2070, which is just kind of crazy, because from the raw numbers and from clock speeds and all that sort of stuff, we can expect that the 2070 will not be much, if any, faster than the 1070 Ti, which is just kind of mad, really. So a couple of other things to mention. First one is definitely on pricing. While the pricing you've seen here and I've talked about and that you'll see everywhere, that is 100% prone to fluctuation. Not only will the add-in board partner cards be much more expensive than the Founders Edition ones, or at least the standard kind of reference pricing that they said, but it will also likely be fluctuating with stock and demand. So you're likely going to see in the first sort of week or two after they're available, which is September 20th, that these cards go for much higher prices than even their MSRP for the Strix version or whatever. That is again likely just due to stock and supply kind of levels, so bear that in mind. If you're desperate for one of these cards, then feel free to pre-order one if you like, but if you're not pre-ordering, then I'd probably wait a couple of months before you try and pick one up, because they're going to be fairly inflated prices. And I think the final thing to mention is that, kind of as I said in the title, don't believe the hype. While they're talking a lot about the RTX kind of system, and they've got a couple of games that do support it, and it does look quite cool, especially stuff like the reflections in cars in Battlefield 5, that's all great. But at the same time, especially with a game like Battlefield 5, where it's fast, or relatively fast-paced anyway, it's multiplayer, and you really don't have time to be admiring the shadows in a car as a tank is driving towards you and you need to get the hell out of the way. I don't know whether that's going to be a big thing. And also I would mention that this has to be supported in-game engines. Yes, they have the Microsoft DXR, but as I said, if DirectX 12 itself can't even be implemented normally, then I don't know how they're going to get DXR implemented except for a lot of money. Otherwise, the comparisons that they're making here, saying that the 2070 is 2x Titan XP performance, as I said, said, that is only in the specific workloads of RTX, you know, shadows and ray tracing and stuff. As you know, standard performance, as was said, the 2070 is likely going to be slower than even the 1070 Ti, let alone 2 Titan XPs. So there's a few things to just bear in mind. Now, of course, we will still have to wait for actual benchmarks to see how well these cards perform in comparison to last gen and all that sort of stuff, and I will hopefully be getting my hands on some, but it likely will be a few weeks before that actually happens, so make sure you are subscribed with notifications on if you want to see those reviews. Now, otherwise, of course, you've heard my thoughts throughout the video, but I would love to hear yours in the comments down below. What do you think of these cards? Is ray tracing and RTX and DXR something you're really excited for? Are you really excited for these cards in general? Are you kind of underwhelmed? Are you overwhelmed? You know, what do you think of pricing? All that sort of stuff, let me know in the comments down below. If you like this style of video, it's a little bit of a new style, making a kind of fairly quick reaction video, if you like. Let me know in the comments down below as well. I would love to hear from you. And otherwise, that is pretty much that. If you want to support the channel and keep me making these videos, especially as quickly as this one, then take a look at all the links in the description. There's Patreon, you can support me directly and get rewards for doing so. You can pick up merch like this t-shirt, or plenty of other designs that aren't necessarily TechteamGB related. There's a link down there. Amazon and Overclock's UK affiliate links, which also massively help me out. Genuinely, like, is a good portion of like paying rent, so thank you very much to everyone who uses those. There's Humble Bundle affiliates, there's Bitcoin donations if you really want, and lots of other stuff. So take a look at all of that in the description down below. And otherwise, yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. There are plenty of other videos over here for you to check out. Make sure you check out the supercut if you haven't already. And yeah, we'll see you all in the next video.